I'm going to go ahead and start the live stream now.
Beautiful.
And I do keep it up on a separate screen so I can kind of watch and see if somebody does comment. But I haven't really seen any commenting. I don't know if it's people don't watch it live and come back later.
Yeah, I couldn't find any links for today because our CEO was like, "Oh, hey, I'll watch it if I can." It's like, that's all right. You can see it later.
Yeah, we're gonna record it. I'll share it with you.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Sure. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So hello, Facebook friend. This is Pamela Dodge with Avant-Garde Insurance Advisors. I am back with another episode of Brew Biz Summer Session. Today, we're here with Carin Weiss with Klik Solutions. She's going to be talking about cybersecurity and the importance in your brewery or small business. And without digging in too much, I'm going to let Carin take over and kind of introduce herself and then dive into your presentation. Carin, you want to go ahead?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Pamela. As we've discussed, I'm pretty passionate about helping educate businesses on what they can do to protect themselves. So really excited and hope everybody finds this information helpful today. Before we get started, I just want to give an overview of Klik Solutions so you understand a little bit of my background and how we are helping clients and businesses prevent cybercrime. So Klik Solutions, we're headquartered in Baltimore, Maryland. I tell folks we're in the shadow of the Domino Sugar sign, and we've been in Baltimore since our beginning, originally starting in Federal Hill. So Klik has 4 primary areas that we provide services for our clients. Anybody from 5 employees to about 500. We're outsourced IT. So the managed IT services, making sure that our clients' computers and servers are patched, that their data is backed up. And we're going to talk about the importance of those things in a little bit. But truly being that IT partner to make sure that businesses are putting the proper protections in place and making sure their technology is working for their business and helping them grow, not hinder it. Our second main area is cybersecurity, what we're going to be really diving into today. Cybersecurity, I remember 4 or 5 years ago, businesses thinking, or telling me that I know I should be thinking about it, but maybe next year. Well, the climate has changed, and that really is, as Pamela can attest to, isn't an option. You need to be aggressive, and it can seem daunting and overwhelming. And that's why it's important to engage with proper partners to make sure that we can demystify the wonders of protecting your business against cybercrime. And that's what Klik's here to do. So everything that helps folks not only secure their business, but also adhere to any compliance and regulatory standards, and ensure that that's something that isn't looming over your head and that is in place to protect you. This all ties in with our cloud expertise. A lot of folks wanted to, especially during the pandemic, get rid of servers that were on-prem or on their facility and move them to the cloud. Have to, stop having to worry about maintaining those servers, keeping them cool, and keeping them up to date. So it's something that's pretty pivotal and integrated with everything else we do. Data analytics is a newer service that Klik provides, and the data analytics is basically taking all of those different systems that companies are utilizing and making sure that we're visualizing that data on one dashboard so that business owners and leaders can make faster and more informed decisions. So enough about that. Let's dive some more into the details. So I want to start just talking about what some common cyber threats are. You may have heard these in the news. You may have unfortunately experienced it, but want to make sure that as we go through and we're talking about other things that you understand the basis of what we're talking about. Phishing attacks. So many of us have gotten those emails that it looks a little suspicious. It is similar spelling to people that you know, or high sense of urgency, encouraging you to follow this link, send some information, buy some gift cards. It's something that's very common, and honestly, one of the highest ways that cyber criminals are able to gain access to the victim's IT environment. So we'll dive into a little bit more about that. Ransomware. So ransomware ties very closely with the phishing attacks. It's a way that there's malware that has gotten access to your system. And once there, it can encrypt the data. And the bad actors that have put this in place and launched this attack on your business will often demand ransom for the release of the data, causing a major disruption in service. What many people don't realize is, yes, you may be inclined and you pay that ransom, but you also need to find out how that was released into your network, because you could still be vulnerable. And unfortunately, just like many communities, cyber criminals in the dark web are very active as well. And if they have your personal information, or there is a vulnerability and there's been an attack and you've paid, well, others are likely going to try. So we need to find out how an attack occurred, how we can prevent that from happening again. So we build up those defenses and make sure that it's not a repeat occurrence. Data breaches. This is unauthorized access to customer information. This could be credit cards. This could be customer files. This could be recipes. It could be your payment information. If you have a shop where you're selling apparel, either online or in person, if any of that data is stored, that's something that could be accessed. And unfortunately, that even if you're able to recover anything or supposedly recover it, there's a lot of reputational damage that can occur, as well as financial damage. And we'll get into some of the hard numbers of how how much that can really hurt a business and hurt their potential for staying in business and growth. Supply chain attacks, cyber criminals exploiting vulnerabilities in the supply chain. I'm sure many of you have heard the Target example from years ago. It's the partners and vendors you work with. It's just as important that they are secured as well, because when you're connecting or if you're attacked, these are ways and entry points for cybercrime to occur. Insider threats. Employees with either malicious or accidental actions can accidentally or intentionally compromise the credentials for your business. This ties back to phishing attacks, really all aspects of these threats, because as we'll see with some of these stats, a very high number of cyber attacks stem back to employees. So don't be a statistic. I'm going to throw some numbers out, but I've, also am more than happy to share this presentation with anybody who requests it, as well as discuss in more detail. I'm going to just touch on this really quickly. Take a look yourself, but small businesses account for 43% of cyber attacks each year. With that, and honestly, Pamela, I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts, but it's on average, a small business loses 25,000 due to cyber attacks. I've actually seen that number as being higher. It depends, but unfortunately, these numbers that come into play are stopped business. What if you can't keep doing production? What if you are not able to do point of sale in your tasting room, or not able to process orders that are needing to be shipped and go out to distribution? These are all things that add up, not to mention any PR that needs to be done, that any remediation that needs to be done. And we'll get into the points of how you can protect against this. One of them is making sure you have a good cyber partner, but that is also very equally aligned with having adequate cyber insurance and making sure that you have a good advisor that's making sure that the coverage you have suits your business and the vulnerabilities that you are exposed to. The third is also legal counsel, and I call them the holy three for helping protect your organization: insurance, cyber partner, legal. The next point is something that we referred to earlier. 95% of cybersecurity breaches are attributed to human error, intentional or not. We've all been there. I've almost clicked or have clicked, and thankfully I know some people who can give me IT support, where I forward to the team and say, I think I did a no, guys. Can you please check this out for me? It doesn't have to be a catastrophe if you have the proper protection and team in place. I can't emphasize that enough. So Accenture has a cybersecurity study that reveals that nearly 43% of cyber attacks are on, well, I already have that stat, but the 43% on small businesses. But what hit me, and I wanted to emphasize here, is that only 14% of those small to medium-sized businesses were prepared for an attack. Attacks are going to happen. I can guarantee you that. But what you can do is having these protections and taking the right steps to limit your exposure and limit the pain that you will feel once this attempt is attempted. I'll give an example in a few minutes of a company that called me that had zero cyber. They didn't have adequate backups, versus somebody that had their insurance, had full and robust cyber protection, and how that it has a visceral effect on most people that I discuss this with. 55% of ransomware hits businesses with less than 100 employees. Think about that. That's many of us. And most, 87% of these businesses possess vulnerable customer data. You're legally bound to notify your clients if their data has been accessed. That's part of what ties back to the reputational damage that occurs. Let's stop that from being a likely occurrence. The last point before I drown you with numbers here is 80% of hacking cases, meaning phishing, ransomware, any of the ones that we listed on the last slide, They're a result of compromised passwords. We're going to get into some of the proper protections you can do, but you've likely heard of this, but multi-factor authentication, MFA. If you use Google Suite, if you use Microsoft 365, it's included in your license. You just have to turn it on. And if you don't know how to do it, there's plenty of us that can help. But not having multi-factor authentication is just leaving the bank vault open. It's something that most insurance policies won't even consider coverage, and we have the expert here with me, so she can keep me honest. But from many compliance and regulatory efforts that you might have to adhere to, if you have to do those security surveys that many clients are requesting from businesses applying for your cyber insurance, this one is the most easy and most commonly exploited. Don't have Ravens 2013 as your password. If you can remember it, it's no good. So I think I've hammered that enough. We'll move on to the next slide. So how do you defend your business? So there's many things, but there's 5 that I wanted to, highlight today. Employee training. So part of what, many policies and CMMC, it's a government compliance now. Some of the requirements for these different standards are that there is some form of employee training in place. With Klik, we do phishing simulation. We also do cyber awareness training. It's important to keep it top of mind. Just like anything, you have to practice. So if you're having these sessions where test simulation of phishing emails are sent out on random occurrence, this is how we do it, at least. If somebody accidentally clicks, or if they accidentally reply to that email, you're then prompted to do some training, reminding you, hey, here's what you could have identified in this email. And it's helping people, the employees, yourselves, remain vigilant. And that's key. And this is the best way to protect your data and your IT environment. Endpoint protection. Deploying endpoint detection systems. And I'm going to go a little additional here. So with our cyber packages, we have endpoint where if we see multiple failed login attempts on a server, notice that there's an alert that there's files being corrupted, or looking at these different alerts and doing active threat hunting and ongoing vulnerability management. These are all different aspects that you might say, hey, Carin, you lost me. But these are different steps that cyber partners should and can be taking to make sure there's just a monitor on your network, so that network can be the SaaS-based system, software you're using through the web. It can be monitoring anything if you have a server at your facility. It also is the workstation. So if we have laptops and computers, mobile devices, having tablets that your sales team is using to go deal with different distributors and so forth. Having protection on all these different areas are going to limit your exposure. Going back to what we talked about of limiting that exposure so that there's less areas and surfaces that can be attacked. Data encryption. Do you care about your data? Do you care about your proprietary recipes, client list, so on and so forth? We want to make sure that we're not only protecting your data and backing up the data, but also encrypting. so that there's additional protections. So should somebody click that link, should somebody get access to your system, we have a safe backup of your data that's, we call it air gapped, that's separate from additional backups, so that we make sure that if something has to be restored, it's clean data. We're not restoring any of the bad information. It's something that's critical, and a prime example of why this matters. Somebody clicks an email, you find out a few days later nobody can access your systems. If there's no backup and there's no protection in place, then we're going to have to scan through everything, be able to identify where the breach occurred, and then go back to cleaning, scanning, and reestablishing your network. If you have those backups and you have the detection, hopefully that wouldn't even occur, but you can just restore your email, your files, so forth with those backups, so that this cuts down on the time to get your business back and running and operational. Access controls. So we talked about multi-factor authentication. That's one way where we're controlling and limiting access for somebody who just guessed your dog's name, or that the Ravens are your favorite team, to log into your email. But also having user privileged management. What does that mean? Sorry, let me go back a slide here. So what does that mean? It means you have an intern. Awesome. Should they have the keys to the kingdom? Should they be able to open a file or your billing or your payroll system? No. So making sure that the appropriate employees and team members have access only to the files that they need, or critical systems that they need. So it's something that we look at, and it's part of building out the proper policies and procedures for your business. Incident response planning, making sure that those backups are clean, making sure that we know how long it would take to restore, and having the other steps in play to make sure that you have a time-effective response to any cyber incidents. So going back to the three main points that I mentioned at the beginning of this session: cyber insurance. Work with your with your insurance advisor to ensure you have the coverage that's right for your business. Pamela can tell you the industry is changing as threats increase. It can be intimidating. That's also why it's important to have the proper IT and cyber partner and legal partner. Many people I find, they say, well, what's the point, Carin? It's going to happen anyway. I'll just reiterate, having these protections in place will ensure that, yes, an attack's going to occur, but it will most likely fail or be caught before it can cause additional damage. I alluded before to a client. They called me. They said, Carin, I can't open my email. I can't access any of our systems. I can't send out some quotes that we've been working on. They were dead in the water. They hadn't implemented cyber protection. They had some outdated hardware on their network. They were planning on replacing it, but wanted to kick the can down the road a little bit. Well, that's how they got attacked, and how the cyber criminals were able to access their system, because there was no log. We weren't able to quickly identify, here's where the breach occurred. That had to be built. We also had to replace some of that hardware. We had to physically touch and rebuild 40 servers. It took 2.5 weeks. Thank goodness they had cyber insurance, because there was a lot of lost business and there was a lot of costs, because you're starting flat-footed and you really have to build that foundation if you have nothing in place. Let me go to a different scenario. A client of mine who has they have cyber operations. So ongoing vulnerability management, monitoring, intrusion detection, etc. Their IT director woke up, he was having his coffee in the morning and checking his email and saw emails from Klik's security team. There was an attempted breach in the middle of the night. Our systems identified the suspicious activity. We isolated that server because we knew from our systems which server was being attacked. We've scanned your network. We've identified how that access occurred. We've created a VPN for the users that need to use the software on that one server. We're working on a quote so we can replace this end-of-life server, and you can operate business as normal. Night and day. It's true impact, and folks like myself and Pamela, we genuinely care, because it pains me to see businesses go through this, and you don't have to be a sitting duck.
So I would just
Okay.
pipe in, and I would have to say that, it's a multi-layer thing based on what you're seeing, what I'm seeing. Insurance is great, for the big financial hit, but also being prepared, the education of your staff, because, when it comes to fraud events, cyber events, and things like that, they're changing every day. They're trying to be more creative, and, we might be educating our staff as they come in as new employees, but as that stuff changes, we need to kind of stay up to date with what they're trying to do now, today.
No, and that's exactly it. I mean, everybody gets annoyed about their Microsoft updates, right? Okay, well, let's break down why that's important. So when Microsoft or Mac, are saying, hey, there's an update, it's because they have their team and other communities that are always working to identify vulnerabilities. What do I mean by vulnerabilities? Ways or weak points on their applications or their platforms or operating systems that cyber criminals can exploit to get in and attack. We all heard about SolarWinds. Okay, Baltimore City a few years ago. Many of these attacks, when you look at them, their workstation that it was eventually tied back to was a workstation that hadn't updated their patches and security updates. It's critical. It's another simple thing you can do. So when you're working with certain, IT and cyber partners, they'll manage that for you. So you don't have to think about it, and come up with a policy that works with your team. But education, and then keeping your hardware up to date.
Yeah.
I already talked about some of these different incidents, but just to reiterate, if there's a real life example of a manufacturer, their formulas are corrupted, or think of a pharmaceutical company. Somebody goes in and hey, we tweaked your formulas a bit. Unless you pay this ransom, we won't be doing that. Well, that's pretty scary. If you're taking some pharmaceuticals, or I've heard cases of concern about hospitals. What if somebody went in and said, hey, we messed with the blood types? I try not to be a fear monger, but these are things that are real concerns that, once again, you can limit the likelihood of that actually getting to that point. Okay, so just before I wrap here, a little overview, a little deeper dive of, Klik's managed services, our IT services and security. If I'm not going to go through the list, but if anybody wants to discuss it further, we have a team of passionate professionals who strive to make sure that we're keeping our clients safe and making IT an enjoyable experience, not something that you cringe when you think about having to discuss. I want to leave you with 3 key takeaways. Defend your business and your livelihood and your clients. How do you do that? insurance, cyber protection, legal counsel. Back it up.
Mhm.
Do you care about your data? Back it up. Do you want to make sure that if something's corrupted, and you have all these other protections in place, but you also need to make sure that something slips through, because remember that 95%, intentional or not, with employees, the things happen, that you can restore your data and continue business as usual. Educate. Pamela said it. I've been beating it to death. Educate your team. So cyber awareness training, phishing simulation, have these things where they're ongoing. And I'm also going to add here, some of the worst actors of businesses can be the owners and the senior folks. Don't let your grandchild come in and just grab one of the workstations and start going on the internet. Don't, make sure that you're looking at these devices. Hey, you have a bring your own device policy for your team. That's fine. Let's make sure we have certain policies in place and you still have MFA set up. So if that computer suddenly disappears, somebody can't just log in and have the keys to the kingdom, because they also don't have access to applications they shouldn't. Any questions? I don't know if any came through on Facebook.
No, I'm not seeing any questions right now, but you did a wonderful job, Carin. Like we talked about, education is like the number one thing, building in security protocols so that you're protecting yourself. And then of course, insurance, so that when it does go sideways, you've got some kind of footing to fall back on to kind of correct the situation, because IT support is expensive. The reality
It can
of the
be.
situation.
I mean, it can, and that's the thing, right? If you have these it's like car insurance.
Yeah, you build on
I
it.
mean,
Mhm.
you build on it, and we were talking about this the other day. I used the analogy of, you want to go get cyber insurance, but you don't have any of these protections in place. It's like asking Geico to cover you, but you don't have a seatbelt or a
No
windshield or a
airbag.
bumper.
You don't stop yourself.
Yeah, you're not
Like,
a good risk. You're not a good risk. So thank you so much, Pamela.
thank
This
you.
was awesome, and
You did
happy
great. I
to
really
speak with
appreciate it. And I
anybody.
love the statistics. That was like really excellent. So thank you so much for that, Carin. All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. You have a great day. Thank you so much. We'll talk again.
You
Okay.
too.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.